happening IRL, because there's a lot of things happening in real life and we like to highlight those. So some of those things might be athletes, it might be activists, it might be entertainers. But this week we have a sports journalist, Kenny Mayne. You may know him from ESPN. He's all over it. But what Kenny Mayne has done is unbelievable. He's created an organization called Run Freely. And he had a catastrophic injury in college that made him not basically able to run and train like he did. A lot of wounded veterans have this same problem. So he created a device to help with that. I'm going to let Kenny tell you about it. Kenny, what's good?
Yeah, UNLV. Randall Cunningham was a freshman when I was a senior. That's how old I am. The kid who played ahead of me, named Sam King, he led the nation in passing yards. But my junior year, the year before, we were getting beat at Oregon. I was in there at the end, and some guy stuck his helmet on my ankle, and I had what was called a fracture dislocation, and ended up playing the next year, because when you're young, you just like, whatever, I'm coming back the next year. But every year subsequent, I got more arthritis. I had like 10 surgeries, bone spurs in, metal out. I won't bore you with all that. But by the time I got older, I was in like real pain, like, depression type of pain where you didn't even want to get up in the morning. And I was out in Seattle, and I had moved back from Connecticut to Seattle. And I went to one doctor who would have taken it off. And I went to another doctor who was going to replace it. And I went to another one who was going to fuse it. And I was trying to debate my options. Yeah. And it's almost funny. I'm not making light of anybody who has to amputate their leg, but those guys kind of saved me because they're like, you're too young. Go find a better therapist, get some better bracing. You're too young to be doing that. So eventually I found this guy named Ryan Blanc. He works at a place called Hanger Clinic in Gig Harbor, Washington. That's near Tacoma. And he changed my life. Like I bought the brace from him. They like to call it a device, not a brace, because a brace is insulting to them. You can get those anywhere. It fits only you. They do a molding, a testing, the fitting. It's very high tech. It's made out of carbon fiber. Don't ask me every last detail of how it works. I don't know how my car works. I just know it works when it works. So I put this thing on, and literally day one, I was running on a treadmill. I was jumping on boxes. I was doing everything. And I started crying for about 2 hours. Like I couldn't believe the gift I had been given. And I called Gretchen. She was out back here in Connecticut. And we just almost immediately said, let's do something good with this. Like we got such a blessing. I can play flag football now. I can go run sprints. I can do hikes with her. I can play golf. I have no pain whatsoever. It doesn't fix anything. It just lets you do stuff, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see somebody in the NFL wearing one because those playoff games where the guy's got his ankle all messed up and needs to make it through one game, but this brace will do it for you. So we started this thing called Run Freely, and our opening event was in August of 2018. It's called Run Freely, RUNFREELY, runfreely.org.org. We're taking donations now because things are thin right now, for sure. And I know there's a lot of good charities out there. There's so many places to give. Food banks need money. And we did it specifically for veterans because the R&D on this was from veterans, right? They came back from war with these injuries, and Ryan outfitted them with this thing to either, live in their retirement or some cases actually go back into service. So that's how we did it specifically for veterans to benefit them. And our opening event had Jamal Crawford, Gary Payton, Steve Largent, Jerry Rice, and Lenny Wilkins. So when I know all them, and when I asked the favor, everybody said yes immediately. Like, it wasn't even a question. Gary dropped everything. Jerry dropped everything. Jamal was already in Seattle, as was Lenny, and Steve flew in from Oklahoma. I thought we'd get 20,000 people. Like, who doesn't want to hang with those guys, So it was a little smaller than that. But you know what? It got out of the gate, and we've had so many generous donations in what's been a couple of years. We're averaging almost one a month, not quite. Like I said, during the pandemic, things have fallen off a bit, but I'm hopeful. And I got to host Pearl Jam Radio. And I had as one of my guests, this young woman named Heather McKay. And she made me cry listening to her gratitude and just how it changed her life. She gave away her wheelchair day one, like came back to New Mexico, and I don't need this wheelchair because I'm walking now. Just the beauty in that and the blessing of helping others, it's been something to behold. I was misjudged. I was not the worst dancer. I think I was the second worst dancer, or maybe the third worst, but I got run off pretty quick. I kept telling the young lady who was my dance partner and instructor, Andrea Hale's her name, I was like, what's something really simple and then they'll think, oh, he's mastered this little simple thing that he can do in this small area. She's like, no, we're going to touch every corner of the damn floor. And I was basically chasing her around the room, screwing around, trying to make a joke of it. Yet I was also trying. But yeah, I lasted 90 seconds. This was before my ankle went really, really bad. Like I was still kind of getting around, I'd swell up and limp around, but I was able to do more things back then. This is way back to like 2006. Yeah, I thought I was going to dance with a star. I didn't understand the concept, but and then I drove Andrea out of the game. They penalized her as well. I don't know if she might have been back, but I'm not positive. I haven't followed it so much since. Well, I had to call them a lot is actually the way it really went down. They had an 800 number. I think they just hired me to save money because I was calling it so much. So out of college, I actually got a tryout with Seattle, but I failed the physical because of my ankle at camp. And I got a job in TV soon after, but I was kind of a gopher, I was checking the wires and I was ripping sheets apart and doing all the PA work, I guess you'd call it, production assistant. And I eventually got a chance to be on. Back then I wanted to do more serious things. Like ended up being a guy on Frontline or, making documentaries and doing serious stuff because I'd already played sports. I had this serious side to me. I was political science. I was going to get a political science major. Instead, the Seattle thing came up. And I settled for my one major in broadcasting. But after a little while at that little station in Tacoma, Washington, my boss was like, hey, we're adding, because we were just like a small time, 5 days a week. Our joke was if there's news on the weekends, there's news to us, but they added a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and I played football, you're doing sports. That was pretty much the logic. So I started doing sports. Long story short, I sent ESPN a tape. Off the 1989 Super Bowl, Joe Montana to John Taylor. I can still see that play. And they brought me back for an interview, but I didn't get hired. Then I quit that job. I went through like a bunch of, I sold prepaid legal insurance. I made garbage cans. I sold long distance, all the while to pay the bills, all the while I was trying to get back in TV. And I started freelancing for ESPN in Seattle for like 3-4 years. And I sent a letter to ESPN. I said, hey, I'm trying to sort out my career. Please check the appropriate box. And the first one said, stand by the mailbox, contract's on the way. Second one said, keep up the freelance work. Third one said, we'll hire you about the time ESPN 5 hits the air. And at the time, they'd added ESPN 2 right about then. So what ended up, they checked the middle box, by the way. It was Keith Olbermann and Susie Colbert doing that show called Sports Night on ESPN 2. Not everybody got it back then. Stuart Scott, Bill Pito, Deb Kaufman, they were like the secondary, they call them the smash anchors. You come on at the 2 minutes before the bottom of the hour, 5 minutes to the top and do a little update. So Keith went back to be with Dan Patrick. Stuart moved up to be the anchor with Susie. They needed one more guy, and that was me. So I wasn't by any means told I was doing SportsCenter. They're like, in fact, just the opposite. Like, hey, be happy you're on ESPN2. I was like, I just worked my way in, and they haven't got rid of me yet. So it's been like 26 years now, and now I'm back to doing SportsCenter again after I've done a variety of things, through all the years. The news, Jerry Maguire. I quoted it the other night. I love that line where he's talking to Cuba Gooding, Rod Tidwell, and he said, I don't know if I have it right, but it's like, it's an up at dawn. How do you say that? It's an up at dawn, pride-swallowing siege that I will never fully tell you about, okay? Miracle on 42nd Street, probably. There's so many good ones. I mean, Titanic's in there, but I don't know. I don't got a good answer on that one. Harbor Island, the Bahamas.
Ooh, I like that.
Gretchen and I got married. I got remarried in 2017, and we had been to a different wedding in Nassau, and we were told, hey, you should go check this little place out. It's called Harbor Island. And you fly to a place called North Eleuthera, little tiny airport, it's like one lane. And so we have just like, seriously, like, I feel like a lot of the people there are just like family to us now. They were so good to us. Last time we went just for a vacation, we saw this lady. You drive golf carts everywhere. You don't even drive cars. The island's so small. You rent a golf cart. That's how you go to your restaurants and so forth. And we're driving down the road one day, and we see this lady. I was like, is that her? That's, and we jump out of the car. We're hugging her. And, so those people are so good. And we try to think of them often and want to help out what's going on with them. Obviously losing a lot of tourism. There's a lot of hurt right now. So we try to contribute a little bit down that way as well. Getting Jamal Crawford signed.
Oh,
He's my guy. So he's a Seattle guy. I'm from that area. We got to know each other at a Lenny Wilkins event. He has this big gala every year, raising money for a community hospital. He's been doing it for 40 odd years. And Jamal's like the sweetest, kindest person I've ever met, probably. And he looks like he's 18 still. So I hype him on SportsCenter. It's like our go-to line, end of the show. By the way, Jamal Crawford available, just letting the NBA guys. So I talked to him the other day. He's coming back to play. He wants to play. He feels confident. I remember when he finally signed with the Nets, I don't think I felt that kind of joy for somebody else, like, I don't know how long, and it was just so. Absolutely. Like I told him, it ain't because I like you and we're friends and it's charity or anything. It's like he deserves it. He can still play. He's in great shape. Like he can offer so much to the young players, just his experience. He's one of the top scorers, top 40 or 50 all time. I mentioned earlier our foundation, Run Freely. Jamal was there at the kickoff event. He also wrote a check and bought one of the devices for a veteran. So he scholarshiped somebody in. Yeah. I mean, I saw what happened in the 2018 Georgia race and saw what happened with Stacey Abrams. And then she immediately, all right, I'm going to do something about this. And, this whole lie about, voter fraud. I'm sure there are a handful of cases where somebody votes twice or somebody illegally does whatever, but it's about, a fraction of a millionth of 1%, whereas voter suppression has been with us since the start of our country. And not until the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, in the 60s, when I was a little kid, did things get fairer, but they still weren't fair across the board. And a lot of my good friends, Eastern Montana, American Indians, and Washington State, we have tribes all over the place. And the Midwest has that issue where they like close down places, where people can vote. I saw people on horseback going to vote this year, 2 hours, showing that they were going to fight through what is clearly a way to suppress the vote, right? If you limit the number of places where a person can vote, fewer people are going to go vote. Not everybody wants to stand in line that long or drive that far. And there's so many people doing good work. And I know there's a bunch of other organizations, but the ones I chose were Fair Fight and Black Voters Matter. And you saw the energy, with which people came and rallied people to register. And there's a couple big races coming up soon in Georgia, Senate races. So it's almost like everybody's like, all right, you did this much, you got to go. Like you said the other day, we're in overtime. Right. So hopefully people are aware and exercise their right. And I'm not even telling you who to vote for. Hey, this is Kenny Mayne. I'm on Remotely Renee, which is an alliteration. It's difficult to say, but I got it out. Really proud to be on this with you because of your commitment and what you did. That was a big risk and very admirable. So you are thought well of in our neighborhood. Wishing you the best. Hopefully people check this one out and all the other interviews you do.
Okay, so I know that there's plenty of people out there that run with pain, feel pain all the time. They call this the magic device for a reason. Check it out. It's for a good cause. It's a 501c3 doing amazing things. Shouts to my guy, Kenny Mayne. Run Freely.